In the year 1000, while you slept in your medieval bed in Europe on the other side of the world, a Chinese bureaucrat paid for your purchases with paper money. While you starved searching for food, a Muslim merchant dined in Cordoba under electric lights. Yes, streetlights in the year 1. While you thought the Earth was flat, astronomers in Baghdad calculated the planet's circumference with 98% accuracy. This is the story they never told you. In the year 1000, 5 completely different worlds existed on the same planet. On one, people awaited the apocalypse. On another, they invented gunpowder. On a third, they played sports with rubber balls. And the craziest thing is, none of these worlds knew the others existed. Imagine for a moment, it's January 1st, 1000. The sun rises over the Earth. But depending on where you are, that sunrise means completely different things. In France, a servant named Guam wakes up shivering in a hut he shares with 3 goats and 5 chickens. He looks up at the sky and wonders if today is the day Christ returns to judge the living and the dead. After all, the priest said 1,000 years is the number of the apocalypse. At exactly the same moment, 5 kilometers away in Kaifeng, China, a civil servant named Li Weiwei sits in a warm restaurant, paying for his dinner with pieces of paper worth gold. Paper money, a technology Europe would only discover 700 years later. While Guam eats stale bread with water in Cordoba, Al-Andalus, a doctor named Ibn Rashid, walks through illuminated streets. Yes, streetlights in the year 1000 toward a library with 400,000 books. For context, the largest library in Christian Europe had fewer than 400 books and now has more. At the same moment that Guillaume prays the Lord's Prayer in Latin without understanding a word, on the other side of the Atlantic, somewhere in what is now Mexico, a young Mayan named Itzamna prepares to play the sacred game of pelota with a 4-kiloton rubber ball. Rubber, another material unknown to Europe. 5 worlds, the same planet, the same year. Realities so different they seem like science fiction. But here's the detail that will blow your mind. These differences were not small. We're not talking about subtle cultural variations. We're talking about centuries of technological differences existing simultaneously. China in the year 1000 had technology that Europe would only acquire in the year 1700. The Islamic world had medicine that Europe would only develop in the year 1500. Mesoamerica had astronomical knowledge that Europe would only confirm in the year 1600. How is this possible? How could the same planet harbor the Stone Age and the Paper Age simultaneously? The answer is on the map. Consider the world of the year 1000. There were no airplanes, no telegraphs. The Atlantic Ocean was an insurmountable barrier for most. The Sahara Desert was a wall of sand. The Himalayan mountains were the roof of the world. Each civilization lived in a geographic bubble, developing its own solutions to the same human problems. This created a fascinating natural experiment. Take the same species, Homo sapiens, place it in 5 different environments, isolate it for 1,000 years. See what happens. In Europe, surrounded by dense forests and brutal winters, the solution was feudalism. Stone castles, serfs tied to the land, a powerful church that promised warmth in paradise to those who endured the cold on earth. In the Islamic world, connecting 3 continents across the desert, the solution was trade, caravans, knowledge as currency, cities as oases of civilization. In China, with its fertile plains and navigable rivers, the solution was bureaucracy, organization, records, and centralized control of millions of people. In the Americas, isolated by 2 oceans, the solution was unique. Complex civilizations without beasts of burden, monumental architecture without wheels, sophisticated agriculture without metal plows. And here's the most fascinating part. Each of these worlds believed it was the center of the universe. The Chinese called their country the Middle Kingdom, literally the center of the world. Europeans drew maps with Jerusalem at the center. Muslims saw Mecca as the navel of the earth. The Mayans believed the world had been created and destroyed many times. And they were the chosen ones of this era. Everyone was right and everyone was wrong. Because while Guillaume shivered in France, convinced he was living in the end times, Liang was preoccupied with the next week's imperial exam. While Ibn Rashid in Cordoba calculated the movements of the planets, Itzam prepared for a game that could cost him his life. Neither knew of the other's existence. Guillaume would die without knowing that China existed. Li Weiwei would never hear of Jesus Christ. Ibn Rashid vaguely knew Europe as a land of barbarians to the north. Itzamd had no idea that other continents existed, but all of them on the same day saw the same sun rise. They all breathed the same air. They were all humans trying to survive, find meaning, leave something for their children. The difference: some had paper money, others barely had coins. Some had hospitals, others died of the flu. Some calculated EPs, others thought they were dragons eating the sun. And most ironically of all, the most backward world, feudal Europe, would conquer all the others in 500 years. How? Why? That's another story, but it begins here in the year 1000, when 5 different worlds revolved under the same sun, unaware that their isolation was numbered, because there was something that connected all these worlds, even if they didn't know it. A 7-mile road that carried silk from China to Rome, spices from India to Constantinople, and ideas, the most dangerous of all cargoes from one world to another. The Silk Road was the Wi-Fi of the year 1000, slow, dangerous, but inevitable. And it was through it that the future was arriving. Slowly, one caravan at a time. But while the future traveled at camel's pace along the Silk Road, let's return to Guillaume, our French servant, who woke shivering on that January morning in the year 1000. Because to understand his life is to understand why Europe was the world of fear, and why this fear, paradoxically, would sow the seeds of its future domination. 4 a.m., still dark, Guoma, not with an alarm clock, but with the neighbor's rooster. It's not really the neighbor, it's the feudal lord who lives in the castle 200 meters away. 200 meters, which could be 200 light years. Guillaume has never entered the castle, never will. He gets up from what he calls his bed, straw on the floor, covered with a rough cloth, and sleeps fully clothed, because January in medieval France is brutal and firewood is expensive. Beside him, his wife Marie Tosse is the same cough as yesterday and the day before, in the year 1. A persistent cough means one thing: death is approaching. His 3 children sleep huddled in the corner. He had 5. 2 died last winter. Normal. Actually, Guillaume is lucky. Half of all children die before the age of 5. If you made it to 15, you might live to 30 maybe. Breakfast is a cruel joke. Stale barley bread. Wheat is for the nobles. The bread is hard as stone. It needs to be soaked in water or watered down beer to keep your teeth from breaking. Beer for breakfast? Yes, because pure water killed. No one knew why. They didn't know about bacteria, but they knew that anyone who drank river water died shitting blood. Fermentation killed germs. Alcohol is a savior. Guillaume chews slowly. It needs to last. The next meal isn't until sunset. Today is Tuesday. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Guillaume works the Lord's land for free. It's the corvée, tax in labor. Friday and Saturday he works on his small strip of land. Sunday is church. Monday he theoretically rests, but he has to repair tools, gather firewood, patch the roof that always leaks. He leaves the house when the sky begins to lighten. He wears what he has, a thick woolen tunic, patched so many times it's more patched than original tunic. Rough linen pants, fancy shoes. Guillaume has cloths for his feet, rags tied with rope. In the Lord's field he finds other servants. No one talks much. Talking wastes energy. Energy is food. Food is scarce. The math is simple and brutal. Today's work: preparing the land for the spring planting. With what? A wooden plow pulled by oxen. Except the oxen are the Lord's and Guillaume must wait his turn. Meanwhile, he uses a hoe. 6 hours bent over, digging frozen earth. His back screams, his hands bleed, normal. Noon, no lunch break. Lunch doesn't exist. Guillaume drinks water from a stream, praying not to die, and continues. But today there's news. Father John appears in the field. Everyone stops. When the priest appears midweek, it's bad news. The end is near, he announces. 1,000 years have passed since the birth of Christ. John's Apocalypse speaks clearly. After 1,000 years, Satan will be released. Prepare your souls. Guillaume feels his stomach turn, and it's not from hunger this time. It's pure fear. The priest continues. There will be signs. The sun will darken. The stars will fall. The dead will rise. Those who don't confess, who don't pay tithes, who don't always return to tithing. 1/10 of everything Guillaume produces goes to the church. From a harvest that barely feeds his family, 1/10 is the ticket to heaven, or at least to avoid going to hell. Guillaume does the math. If the world is going to end, why plant? But if it doesn't end and he doesn't plant, he'll starve. It's a cruel gamble to bet on the apocalypse, or the next harvest. He decides to keep digging, not out of skepticism. Guam is a firm believer in the end times, but why not dig? It means a lashing from the foreman. Now the end of the world is uncertain. The whip is guaranteed. 3 in the afternoon, a commotion. Screams coming from the village. Guillaume and the others run. Pierre, the miller, has been caught stealing grain. 2 sacks hidden in his house. The trial is quick. The feudal lord doesn't even show up. He sends his representative. The sentence to lose his right hand here, now in front of everyone, the village executioner. Yes, the whole village had one. He places Pierre's hand on a stump, an axe, a blow. Screams that Guillaume will hear in his nightmares. But the worst part isn't the blood, it's what comes after. Pierre's wife weeps not for the hand, but for the death sentence, what it means. A miller without a right hand can't work, without food. Guam returns to the field, digging harder. It could be him, a sack of grain, a chicken, anything to feed Mari, who is rooting for more and more. Anything so that his children don't have that empty look of hunger. 6 in the afternoon, soil. End of work. Guillaume drags his feet back home. On the way, he passes through the church. The doors are open. Inside, dozens of villagers pray, weep, confessing sins real and imagined. The fear of year 1 is palpable. A woman screams that she saw the devil in the well. A man swears the cows spoke in tongues. Signs, all are signs of the end. Guillaume enters the house. Marie hasn't gotten up all day. Her cough is worse. The children have made turnip soup, hot water with 3 old turnips. It's dinner. They eat in silence. Outside, wolves howl, or are they demons? In the year 1000, the line between the real and the supernatural is blurred. Everything is possible. Everything is a threat. Before sleeping, Guillaume prays, asks forgiveness for impure thoughts. He looked at the blacksmith's daughter for 2 seconds too long. He asks forgiveness for doubting. For a moment, just a moment, he questioned if God really cared. He asks forgiveness for wishing. Sometimes he dreams of white bread, meat, a day without work, sins, everything sin. And with the end of the world approaching, he lies down on the straw. Tomorrow he will wake up at 4 again. If the world doesn't end tonight, if the dead don't rise, if Christ doesn't come with his trumpets. And herein lies the cruel irony. Guillaume prays for paradise, but secretly hopes for one more day. Even if it's a shitty day, even if it's digging frozen earth with bleeding hands, because the alternative, the final judgment, is even more terrifying. This was what it was like to be European in the year 1000, living between the fear of hell and hell on earth, between the promise of paradise and the certainty of hunger, between faith and the lash. Meanwhile, 3,000 kilometers away, in a city Guillaume couldn't even imagine, Ibn Rashid was about to undergo surgery under anesthesia in a hospital with running water. Same planet, same year, different worlds. And it is to this other world that we now go, to Al-Andalus's Cordoba, where the year 1000 wasn't the end of. In those days, it was the height of civilization. And Ibn Rashid was about to prove it. It's 7 a.m. in Cordoba, Al-Andalus. At the same time that Guillaume began digging frozen earth with his bleeding hands, Ibn Rashid washes his hands with soap and water. Yes, soap, in a marble fountain inside the Maristan Cordoba's public hospital. Running water in 1,000 meters, brought by aqueducts that the Romans built and the Muslims perfected. The water gushes clean, fresh, endless. Ibn Rashid doesn't even think about it. For him, it's normal, as is what he's about to do, removing a cataract from a patient's eye while the patient is conscious but painless. The patient is Ahmad, a 55-year-old merchant. In Guillaume's Europe, 55 would be considered old age. Here, it's prosperous middle age. Ahmad lies on a polished marble table, clean, sterilized with alcohol. Muslim doctors didn't know about bacteria, but they knew that alcohol prevented infections. Ibn Rashid prepares the anesthesia, a sponge soaked in a mixture of opium, mandrake, and cannabis. The soporific sponge, called Ahmad, inhales the vapors. Within minutes, he is conscious but feels nothing. In Europe, the same operation would be performed with the patient screaming, held down by 4 men. The operation takes 15 minutes. Ibn Rashid uses a hollow needle to suck out the cataract, a technique developed here in Cordoba that Europe would only recognize 700 years later. Ahmad will regain his sight. In Europe, he would be blinded or killed by the brutal attempt to cure with a hot iron. But let's return to the beginning of Ibn Rashid's day. He wakes up in his home in the medical district of Cordoba, a 3-story house. with an interior courtyard with a fountain and geometric tiles that keep the space cool even in summer. His wife Zara is also a doctor specializing in childbirth. This is not uncommon. In the Islamic world of the year 1, women could be doctors, teachers, even rulers. Breakfast: white wheat bread with olive oil, fresh cheese, dates, almonds, honey, all washed down with mint tea in glass cups. Clear glass, another technology Europe barely knows. Ibn Rashid kisses his 3 children, all literate, all studying at the madrasa. His eldest daughter Fatima is learning algebra LGJ in Arabic. While Guam can't count her fingers and toes past 20, Fatima solves quadratic equations. Leaving home, Ibn Rashid walks along paved streets, paved with geometrically cut stones. Running water channels along the sides carry away waste. There are no open sewers, no mud. There is none of the stench that defines European cities. And the light, my God, the light. Every 100 meters, lampposts with oil lamps, lit every night by civil servants paid by the caliphate. Guam has never seen a lit street. For him, night means total darkness except for the moon. Ibn Rashid passes through the market. The contrast with the village of Guillaume is almost obscene. Here there are oranges from Syria, cinnamon from Ceylon, pepper from India, silk from China. Gold and silver coins circulate freely. The gold dinar of Cordoba is accepted from Damascus to Cairo, from Fesa to Samarkand. In the market, an argument breaks out. 2 merchants dispute the price of saffron. They go to see the judge, but it is not an arbitrary judgment like the one that cut off the hand of Pierre the Miller. Here there is a code of written laws, witnesses, the right of defense, written contracts worth more than oaths. Ibn Rashid arrives at Maristan. It is a huge complex, separate wards for different diseases, something Europe would not understand for centuries. A ward for fevers, a ward for fractures, a ward for mental illness. Yes, treated as illnesses, not demonic possessions. Each patient has a single bed with sheets changed regularly. In Europe, sick people huddle on church floors hoping for miracles. The hospital library has 15,000 volumes, medical treatises by Hippocrates and Galen, translated from Greek, Persian texts on surgery, Indian manuals on medicinal herbs, original observations by local physicians. Ibn Rashid consults a treatise by Al-Razi on smallpox, a perfect description of the symptoms, progression and treatment, written 100 years ago. Still the best text on the subject in the world. Noon. The call to prayer echoes from the minarets. Ibn Rashid washes himself, a ritual but also hygienic ablution, and prays on the rug he keeps in his office. 5 times a day, the entire city stops, its social organization through religion. After prayer, lunch is served in the hospital cafeteria. Spiced lamb, saffron rice, fresh vegetables, fruit. Doctors, nurses, and even recovering patients eat together, discuss cases and exchange knowledge. It's an informal university. In the afternoons, Ibn Rashid teaches. He has 12 students, including 2 Christians and 1 Jew. In the Islamic world of year 1, knowledge transcends religion. He demonstrates how to take a pulse. 60 different types of pulse, each indicating something. He shows how to examine urine, color, smell, even taste, to diagnose diabetes. A student asks about the plague. Ibn Rashid explains the revolutionary theory of contagion, diseases that pass from person to person. It's not divine punishment or bad air, it's something invisible that passes between people. Quarantine works, isolation saves lives, concepts that Europe would discover 400 years later during the Black Death. At 4 p.m., Ibn Rashid goes to the House of Wisdom, the main library of Cordoba, 400,000 books. For perspective, the largest library in Christian Europe has 400. Here, medical treatises alone, there are 5,000. He looks for a specific text. Ibn Sina's Canon of Medicine, Avicenna for the Latins, just arrived from Persia. It is the most advanced medical text ever written. It lists 760 medicinal drugs. It describes the contagious nature of tuberculosis. It explains what diseases can, passing through soil and water. Beside Ibn Rashid, an astronomer calculates the Earth's circumference. On the other side, a mathematician works on equations that Europe would only see with Newton. All under one roof, all sharing knowledge. At 6 p.m., Ibn Rashid returns home, stopping at one of Cordoba's 900 public baths. Yes, 900. Hot water, cold water, a steam room. Hygiene as a social ritual. In Europe, bathing is considered dangerous. It opens the pores to disease, they say. Gu bathes perhaps twice a year. In the evening, they have dinner as a family. They talk about the day. His daughter Fatima solved a complex mathematical problem. His son recited 30 verses of the Quran from memory. The youngest, Omar, wants to be an astronomer. Everyone has a future. Everyone has choices. After dinner, Ibn Rashid goes up to the terrace. Cordoba stretches out before him. 500,000 inhabitants, larger than Paris, London, and Rome combined. Streetlights form terrestrial constellations. The sound of fountains mingles with the distant music of lutes. He thinks of the patient Ahmad, who tomorrow will see the world clearly again. He thinks of the students who will bring knowledge to his lands. He thinks of the books he will still read, the discoveries he will still make. At no point does Ibn Rashid think of the end of the world, for he would. The world is flourishing, knowledge expands, cities grow, trade prospers. The year 1000 is not the end of anything. It is the middle of a golden age. But Ibn Rashid knows there is a world beyond. Along the trade routes, there have been stories of a land to the north, where people live in cold, dark castles, where knowledge is a sin and ignorance a virtue, where hands are cut off for stealing bread. Barbarians, he mutters, shaking his head. Little does he know that these barbarians in 500 years will be pounding the gates of Cordoba with cannons, with an inquisition, with a hunger for conquest that the refined world of Islam cannot contain, will be able to contain it. But this is the future. Today and now in the year 1000, the Islamic world is the beacon, and far, far away beyond the deserts and mountains, another beacon shines even brighter. In Song China, they're not just saving lives or calculating stars. They're literally inventing the future. El finishes counting his bills, not metal coins but paper, pieces of paper worth gold. He's paying his monthly taxes at the city hall in Kaifeng, the capital of the Song dynasty. The official stamps his receipt with an official seal, red ink. Date, 3rd month of the year of the metal dragon, which in the Western calendar would be April of the year 1. Li Wei is an average merchant, bringing tea and porcelain. Nothing extraordinary, but his daily life would make Gilholm's head explode and would leave even Ibn Rashid impressed. First, the city where he lives. Kaifeng has 1 million inhabitants. 1 million, Gilholm's London has 10,000. Ibn Rashid's Cordoba, glorious as it is, has 500,000. Kaifeng has twice that number, and it's not the only one. Chang'an, Hangzhou, and several Chinese cities exceed 500,000 inhabitants. How to feed so many people? Industrialized agriculture, if we can use that term. The Chinese have perfected rice cultivation on flooded terraces, a technique that produces 3 times more food per hectare than European wheat. Irrigation systems, with floodgates, dikes, and canals that look like modern engineering. Crop rotation that keeps the soil fertile indefinitely. But let's get back to Li Wei. After paying his taxes, he walks down the street to the night market. Yes, night. Kaifeng never sleeps. It has specialized markets 24 hours a day. Silk market in the morning, spice market in the afternoon, food market in the evening, entertainment market in the early hours. Entertainment in the early hours of the morning. Lei stops at a tea house that stays open until dawn. It's not a European tavern with drunks fighting. It's a refined establishment. Waitresses, yes, formal professions, serve 30 different types of tea. Musicians play on a raised stage. There's even what we'd call a menu, a wooden board with dishes and prices written on it. He orders delivery, another crazy Chinese Y2K craze. Delivery drivers bring hot food to any address in the city, like an address system. Every street has a name. Every house has a number. The delivery driver can find any place in Kaifeng. In Europe, addresses are the house next to the blacksmith, near the old church, while waiting lion. Manuscript copied by monks, printed book. China invented woodblock printing 300 years ago. Now they're experimenting with movable type, individual letters that can be rearranged. Gutenberg will be 450 years too late. The book is a business manual, How to Profit from Maritime Trade, written by a retired bureaucrat. Sold in bookstores, yes, stores that only sell books. It costs the equivalent of a day's labor. In Europe, a book costs the equivalent of a farm. Li Weiwei's cell phone rings. Just kidding, but a messenger almost arrives with a note from his partner, Hangzhou. It arrived in just 3 days, with a government postal system, relay stations every 50 kilometers, exchanged horses, professional couriers. A letter crosses China in 2 weeks. In Europe, if it arrives, it takes months. The message: a problem with a shipment. Li Wei needs money quickly to resolve it. He goes to what we would call a bank, the flying exchange office. He deposits gold in Kaifeng, receives a piece of paper. His partner in Hang presents the paper, receives gold. Bank transfer in the year 1000. The next day, Li Wei needs to hire new employees. Where to find them? There's a newspaper, printed leaflets distributed daily with news and advertisements. He posts, "Wanted, accountant with knowledge of abacus and writing, salary, 30 copper cords per month." Yes, accountant. Double-entry bookkeeping has existed in China for centuries. Cash books, balance sheets. Li Wei is not a nobleman. He is not a scholar. He is just an average merchant and keeps more sophisticated financial records than any European kingdom. Candidates appear all literate. Education is not a privilege here. There are public schools, the government pays teachers. There are private schools. There are tutors. A peasant's son, if he is intelligent, can study, pass the imperial examination, and become a mandarin. The imperial examination. Let's talk about that. Every year, thousands of young people take the exam. It doesn't matter if your father is a peasant or a duke. What matters is what you know. History, philosophy, poetry, mathematics, law. The best become civil servants. The best of the best govern provinces. It's an imperfect meritocracy, sometimes corrupt, but meritocracy. Compare it to Europe. Born a serf, die a serf. Born a nobleman, die a nobleman. Merit is irrelevant. Li Wei hires Wang Xiao Li, a woman. Yes, women work outside the home in Song, China. There aren't limitations in everything, but far more so than in Europe or even the Islamic world. Xiaoli is a widow, supports 2 children, and knows math better than many men. In the afternoon, Li Wei goes to the doctor, not a healer but a trained physician. Chinese medicine in 1900 already had rudimentary vaccination against smallpox, weak conversion infection, pulse diagnosis, 28 different types, systematized acupuncture, pharmacology with 2,000 catalogued substances, surgery with anesthesia, not as good as the Arabic one, but it exists. The doctor prescribes a formula. Li Wei goes to the pharmacy. Pharmacy, an establishment specialized only in medicines. The pharmacist weighs ingredients on a precise scale, mixes packages, writes instructions for use. Total professionalization. In the evening, family dinner. A table with 12 different dishes, rice of course, but also noodles. Yes, China invented tofu, vegetables sautéed in oil, Peking duck, soy sauce, jasmine tea, cutlery, bamboo chopsticks. More hygienic than eating with your hands. Hands like Guam. More practical than Ibn Rashid's knife and spoon. After dinner, entertainment. Li Wei takes his family to the theater. Paid admission, numbered seats, a play with a written script, professional actors. The play is a comedy about a corrupt official. Social criticism permitted, even encouraged. The Song government understands it's better for the people to laugh at corruption in the theater than to riot in the streets. During intermission, yes, there's an intermission. Vendors circulate selling popcorn. No, seriously, popcorn with sugar. Popcorn in the year 1000. Returning home, the streets are lit by lanterns, not as good as those in Cordoba, but they exist. Guards patrol, municipal police paid by the government. Crime exists, but Kaifeng is safer than any European city. Before bed, Li Wei updates his accounting books, uses an Ibanus, a mechanical calculator, does math that Gom couldn't understand, plans for the following month, perhaps expanding into trade with Korea, or investing in the new coal mines. Yes, China already mines and burns, industrial-scale coal production. His eldest son studies for the imperial examination. If he passes, the family rises in social class. His youngest son wants to be an inventor. He's obsessed with gunpowder, still only used for fireworks, but he has ideas. His daughter is learning business management. When Li Wei dies, she can inherit and run the company. It's not common, but it's legal. Women can own property, make contracts, even divorce under certain circumstances. Li Wei extinguishes the oil lamp. Glass with an adjustable wick, technology that Europe doesn't master. He lies on a raised bed with a cotton mattress. Silk sheets. He's not rich. Silk is common in China. Tomorrow will be another normal day in Kaifeng. Paper money circulating, printing presses working, factories, yes, we can call them that, producing iron and steel, ships with compasses sailing, gunpowder waiting for its moment to change the world. Li Wei doesn't know, but he lives in the future. A future that Europe will only reach in 500, 600, sometimes 700 years. And the more ironically, all this technology, all this sophistication, is slowly flowing westward along the Silk Road. Paper will take 200 years to reach Europe. Gunpowder 300, printing 400, compasses 250. It's as if China were a reverse time machine sending technology into the past, and the stubborn past, taking centuries to understand the present. While Lei sleeps its technological sleep thousands of miles away, caravans cross deserts carrying not just silk and spices, but the future, one camel at a time. And Rashid al-Balkh knows exactly what his camel is carrying. It's not just silk that will yield 50 times its weight in gold when it reaches Constantinople. It's something more valuable. Information, recipes, techniques, ideas worth more than all the gold in Persia. Rashid is no ordinary merchant. He's what we call a Silk Road merchant, but that's like calling Christopher Columbus a boatman. Rashid speaks 7 languages and can convert between 15 different monetary systems. He knows the laws of 30 kingdoms, and now in April 1000, he is in the middle of the Taklamakan Desert, the place from which there is no return, leading a caravan of 300 camels. Let's understand the scale of this. 300 camels, each carrying 200 kilo. There are 60 tons of goods, value impossible to calculate. Chinese silk that cost a silver coin in Xi'an will be worth 50 in Baghdad, 100 in Damascus, 200 in Constantinople. If it arrives, sea is the keyword. Half of the caravans do not complete the journey. Bandits, sandstorms, lack of water, disease. The Silk Road is not a road. It is a life or death gamble that lasts for years. Rashid's caravan is a mobile city. In addition to the 300 pack camels, there are 50 horses, 200 people, merchants, guards, guides, cooks, doctors, translators, even prostitutes. It's a walking economy crossing the void. Day 127 of the journey, they left Jiyao in December. Now they are in the heart of the desert. The temperature during the day 45°, at night almost 0. Water is rationed, half a skin per person per day. Camels drink every 3 days when they find an oasis. The oasis. Let's talk about Turpan, where the caravan is arriving. Turpan shouldn't exist. It's an engineering miracle. The city survives thanks to Kari's underground aqueducts, which bring meltwater from the Tiansha Mountains, 100 kilometers away. Hand-dug tunnels, some 1,000 years old, fresh, clean water in the middle of hell. The caravan arrives at the caravan, the Silk Road service station, walls 10 many high, gates that close at sunset. Inside rooms, stables, warehouses, even a mosque, a Nestorian church and a Buddhist temple. Ecumenism forced by commerce. Rashid pays the fees. Sir de Turpan charges 10% of the value of the load. Extortion? No protection. Your soldiers patrol the nearby routes. Without them, the bandits would attack within hours. In the Sarai Babel caravan, Chinese selling silk, Persians with carpets, Indians with spices, Byzantines with gold, Arabs with incense, Vikings, yes, Vikings with furs, and all negotiating, all translating, all calculating. Rashid meets another merchant, Marcos de Antioquia. Christian, it doesn't matter. On the Silk Road, profit transcends religion. Marcos has a proposal. Paper, paper. Rashid examines the thin, light-resistant leaves. The Chinese write in this. They write, draw, even wrap things. And look at this. Marcos shows something revolutionary. Paper money is worth gold. The Song government guarantees. Rashid thinks paper instead of parchment, revolutionary. He buys 500 reams he doesn't know, but he's just become the man to take paper to the West. In 200 years, the Islamic world will dominate manufacturing. In 400, it will reach Europe. It all started here, with Rashid taking a chance on a technology he didn't fully understand. At night, in the caravanserai common room, stories circulate over rice wine. A Sogdian merchant tells of the hairy men of the north, Vikings who arrived across the Volga River. They want silk for their women. They offer slaves and skins. The culture shock is brutal. Vikings don't understand why Muslims pray 5 times a day. Muslims don't understand why Vikings don't bathe. A Buddhist monk speaks of a new sea route. Huge Chinese ships, junks with 400 people sailing to India. Faster than camels, safer. Rashid listens worriedly. If the sea replaces the desert, it is finished. A Radhanite Jew, experts in connecting Europe and Asia, has disturbing news from the West. Christians are going crazy. They think the world is going to end because the year has 3 equal numbers. Rashid laughs. Let them pray. While they fear the end, we do business. But the most important conversation is with Hang Wei, a Chinese official disguised as a merchant. China wants to control the Silk Road, but not militarily, economically. Paper money, Wang explains after a few glasses of wine. We control the printing, we control the value. We don't need to transport gold. It's brilliant and terrifying. Rashid understands. He who controls the currency controls trade. Whoever controls trade controls the world. 3 days in Turpa. Rest, repairs, resupply, and information. Rashid learns about the compass. Magnetized needle that always points north. About gunpowder, it's still just fireworks, but he sees military potential. About printing, mass production of knowledge. Departure at dawn, next stop. Samarkand, 2,000 kilometers, 2 months if everything goes well. The caravan reorganizes. Camels rested, wineskins filled, morale recovered. Rashid leads the column into the desert again. But something changed. In the bags of his personal camel, in addition to silk and spices Rashid carries, paper will change how knowledge is recorded. Gunpowder formula secretly noted, drawing of a compass copied from a drunken Chinese navigator. Abaco will teach your son mathematics, printing technique memorized after generous bribery. Rashid doesn't know it, but he carries 5 revolutions in his bags. When he dies in 20 years, rich in Damascus, he will leave his children not just gold, but knowledge that will change the world. The silk he carries will be worth fortunes and will dress nobles. But the roll will change how humanity thinks. Gunpowder will change how it makes war. The compass will change how you navigate. Print will change how you share ideas. The abacus will change how it calculates. As the caravan disappears into the desert heat haze, one truth becomes clear. The Silk Road didn't transport products. It transported the future. And men like Rashid, without knowing it, were engineers of history. Each oasis, a university. Each caravanserai, a conference. Each merchant, a teacher. Each negotiation, a class. Gail home in his French village prays to survive the winter. Ibn Rashid in Cordoba saves lives with surgery. Lewei in Kaifeng pays with paper money. But it's Rashid al-Balkh sweating in the desert sun that connects them all, even if they never know it. And as he crosses Central Asia on the other side of the planet, in lands none of these men imagine exists, another world goes on completely oblivious to camels, paper money, or gunpowder. A world where gold is worthless, but a rubber ball can cost you your life. As Rashid disappeared with his caravan over the desert horizon, carrying silk, gunpowder, and ideas that would change Asia, Africa, and Europe. On the other side of the planet, there was absolute silence. No camels crossed those lands. No merchant brought news from afar. In America, no one knew that a Silk Road existed. It was an entire world isolated by 2 oceans. And it is here that we meet Itzamna, a young Mayan who wakes up at sunrise in a city that today we would call Shen Itz. For Guam, it would be an impossible vision. Stone pyramids taller than any European cathedral. Perfect staircases, squares designed for thousands of people in temples that not only housed faith, but science. Itzamna doesn't know what currency is, but he knows how to plant corn in lands so fertile that they support entire cities without needing a metal plow, without oxen, without horses. He doesn't know the wheel for transporting loads, but he has played with wheeled toys since he was a child. The wheel existed, but it never found a practical function in a world without draft animals. His daily diet is more varied than Guillaume's. Corn tortillas, beans, pumpkin, pepper, and the luxury of the gods. Cocoa, drunk hot, bitter, beaten until foamy. For the Mayans, chocolate is not a dessert, it is sacred. But today is not an ordinary day. Today, Itzamna will play the pelota game. The field is monumental. 2 parallel stone walls, stone rims 6 meters high. The ball weighs almost 4 kilos, made of solid rubber, a material that no European knew about. Simple rules. Keep the ball in play using only your hips, shoulders, and elbows. Simple. Until you remember that the result of the game could mean death. Because for the Mayans, the match is not just a sport. It is a ritual. It is the symbolic struggle between life and death, between the sun and darkness, and often the losing team paid in blood. Itzam's heart quickens. He knows that every movement is watched not only by the audience, but by the gods. For him, losing could mean ultimate honor, being sacrificed and feeding the cosmos. It's a weight that Gaume, digging dirt in France, could never imagine. And yet, while Gaume fears the end of the world, the Mayans study it. On temple walls, astronomer priests record future eclipses centuries in advance. While European monks barely know how to count to 20, Itzam grows up in a civilization that already masters the number 0, a concept that would change all mathematics, but that Europe would only learn 600 years later. Isolation makes this world seem like another planet. No news from China, no rumors from Islam, no memories from Rome. For the Mayans, they are the center of the universe, and in some ways they are. Because in Itzamna's calendar, time is not linear. The world has already been born and has died 4 times. Now they live in the 5th age, and everything they do, planting, playing, sacrificing, is to maintain the fragile balance that sustains the cosmos. While Rashid trades paper on the Silk Road, Itzam scores a point in the sacred game. While Li Wei and Kaifeng pays with printed banknotes, he pays with sweat, blood, and faith for the right to keep the universe existing another day. While Ibn Rashid saves a man from blindness in Cordoba, Itzam plays to save the sun itself. Different worlds, same year, same planet, but separated by oceans, which for now are walls impossible to cross. And this is where the story takes its most brutal turn, because now with the 5 worlds established, it's time to compare them head to head. The same sun, the same day, the same minute, opposite lives. While Itzamna plays his life on a stone court, believing that the result can sustain the cosmos, the sun continues its relentless course. And it is at that same moment that we understand the true paradox of Year 1. 5 different worlds living in the same minute, as if the planet were a board divided into parallel realities. January 1st, Year 1, the sun rises. In France, Gu wakes up shivering in his freezing cabin. In Muslim Spain, Ibn Rashid walks through bright streets towards the hospital. In Kaifeng, Li Weiwei pays for your dinner with paper money. In the desert of Central Asia, Rashid gave him 300 camels on the sand, and in the heart of Mesoamerica, Itzamna bows before a rubber ball that is worth more than life itself. All under the same sun, all breathing the same air, but each living in different centuries. If it were possible to freeze the planet at that moment and walk from village to village, from city to city, we would see contrasts that border on science fiction. Gaume chews hard bread with cloudy water. Li Wei helps himself to rice, fresh fish, and sautéed vegetables. Ibn Rashid has lamb with Indian spices for lunch. Itzamina drinks dark chocolate from a ceramic cup. And Rashid, in his tent, tastes dried dates bought from a Bedouin, the same planet. 5 menus separated by oceans and centuries of technological difference. And how much is a life worth in this fragmented world? For Guillaume, a servant, the price is written: 30 pieces of silver. For Lichwei, each citizen is registered as a taxpayer. Your life means taxes, and therefore has value to the state. In the Islamic world, there is even a legal calculation: the day, compensation for someone's death, that varies according to religion and social status. And for Itzamna, life can be measured not in coins, but in sacrifice. Losing your life is an honor, if it is to keep the universe functioning. 5 worlds, 5 values for what should be universal human existence. And most impressively, none of them know of the other's existence. Gaume will die without hearing about China. Law will never know Christianity. Ibn Rashid will vaguely call Europe the land of barbarians. Itzamna will never imagine that there are other continents besides his own. And Rashid, who connects worlds through the desert, completely ignores that an ocean holds an entire continent invisible to his map. Year 1 was not a united planet. It was a mosaic of human islands, separated by walls of ice, desert, and sea. A natural experiment, the same species living 5 different futures at the same time. And yet there was something invisible that slowly began to bring these worlds together. Ideas, diseases, inventions traveling at a camel's pace, in the stomachs of rats on ships, in a merchant's pocket. The thread that would connect destinies was being woven. And it is this tenuous, fragile, but unbreakable thread that we will follow now. The invisible connections, which even without them knowing were already writing the future. 5 worlds separated by deserts, mountains and oceans. 5 civilizations that believed they lived isolated, unique, central in the universe. But there was something that none of them could see, the invisible threads which were slowly sewing the story into a single tapestry. These threads were not armies nor flags. They were ideas, they were diseases. They were technologies traveling at the pace of a camel, at the pace of sailing ships, at the randomness of rats hidden in cellars. Gunpowder, for example, invented in China, used only in fireworks, would cross deserts and seas for 3 centuries before exploding in European cannons. The paper, born in Chinese factories, would pass through the hands of Arab merchants, transform Islamic libraries, and only centuries later would reach European monasteries. And the numbers we use today, 0123, started in India, were refined by the Islamic world and took 400 years to finally enter the accounting records of a European merchant. The future traveled slowly from caravan to caravan, from parchment to parchment, from mouth to mouth, but it traveled. And they weren't just inventions that crossed borders. Diseases also waited their time. Smallpox lay dormant in the cities of Asia. The bubonic plague was already stalking the rodents on the steppe. When they finally crossed continents, they would do in months what armies would take centuries to achieve. Change the destiny of humanity. A monk copying a manuscript in a European monastery, a merchant exchanging coins in Samarkand, a peasant planting rice in China, a Mayan priest observing the stars. None of them knew, but they were all connected. Each invention that traveled, each epidemic that emerged, each caravan that survived the desert, brought the worlds closer together without them realizing it. The planet seemed fragmented, but in fact it was already a slow, fragile, silent, but inevitable network. And it is this invisible network that prepares the biggest turnaround in history. Because isolation wouldn't last forever. The ocean would no longer be a wall, the desert would no longer be a barrier. And when these 5 worlds finally met, nothing would remain the same. But before meeting, we need to go back to the beginning, to the sun that rose on the 1st of January of the year 1000, and understand that the same dawn that illuminated Gilom, Ibn Rashid, Liwei, Rashid and Itzamin also illuminates us today. And it is on this bridge, between past and present, that we reach the conclusion. The year 1000 showed us something extraordinary. 5 different worlds, 5 simultaneous futures, all coexisting under the same sun. And deep down, this isn't just a story about the past. It's a mirror of the present. Because even today, there are 5 worlds on the same planet. As you watch this video in the comfort of your home, someone wakes up in a village without electricity. While you complain about slow internet, someone walks miles to fetch water. While you read the news on your cell phone, someone is still trapped in fear and hunger like Guillaume. And this leads us to a question. Which world would you have been born into if it weren't for luck? Because the truth is simple and brutal. You won the time lottery. You were born after anesthesia, after antibiotics, after the internet. You were born in a century in which survival is no longer the daily struggle for most. This is a gigantic privilege. Now I need you to do something. If this trip through year 1 made you think, if any part of this story surprised you, then show me that it was worth being here. Leave your like. It's as if it were a sign that this type of content deserves to continue existing. Subscribe to the channel because this is just one of the many historic journeys that we will travel together. And comment below in which of these 5 worlds do you think you would survive? The Europe of fear, the Islam of science, the China of the future, the Mesoamerica of rituals, or the Silk Road of merchants? I will read every comment and I really want to know your answer. And if this video made you reflect, share it with someone because knowledge only gains strength when it circulates. And maybe for someone close to you, this is the kind of story that changes the way you see the world. And before you leave, don't leave yet. Another video is already appearing on your screen, which is the natural continuation of this journey. Click on it now and together, let's dive even deeper into stories that no one has ever told you. See you there.